Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to talk about tank monitoring in your fifth wheel. So we have a Landmark 365 fifth wheel, and one of the more annoying things I've found while maintaining this trailer is there isn't any way to monitor the tanks from outside of the coach. You have to go inside and look at the touchscreen panel. It's not a huge deal, but you have to walk around the coach, go inside, hit the touchscreen, and maybe you've got dirty hands from working on the waste system, so on and so forth. It's just not an ideal situation. While I was troubleshooting another issue with our KibNet system, I had opened up this access panel in the front pass-through compartment and found that this remote tank monitoring display was just tucked behind the compartment wall. So for a little while I just let that remote display kind of hang out of that access panel door, and I could see the tank information from there without going into the trailer, but I did still have to walk around to the door side from the wet bay side. And so I thought, I can make this better. So I went ahead and took out that compartment wall so I can get a better look at how I can move this display over to the wet compartment side of the coach. Now, before we get into the thick of this, I just want to remind everyone to be careful when working on any electrical components, as there's a risk of harming yourself and the equipment that you're working on. Always turn the power off while working and double check that your connections are correct before re-energizing any circuits. The solution I'm about to share with you worked for my application, and although it will likely work for yours, the configuration may not be exactly the same. Please make sure to check your wiring so that any incorrect connections are not made, as these could result in damage to your systems. As always, work at your own risk, and this video is not intended to be followed exactly for your application. So there are a total of 8 wires that this remote display uses to provide data from the KibNet head-end unit. So I had some 5-wire 18-gauge thermostat cable lying around, and basically what I did was splice in that cable between the Kib head unit and this remote display. First, I drilled a 1-inch hole in the location I planned on mounting this display in the wet compartment. Now, you can mount this anywhere. I picked the location above the water filter as it was mostly out of the way, but still very accessible, so you can actually use the display in that compartment. I then ran the thermostat wires through the utility space behind the front pass-through compartment and through the hole that I had just drilled, and went wire by wire, individually cutting the existing harness out and splicing in that thermostat wire on the door side of the coach and then in the wet compartment. I used these heat shrink connectors with built-in solder. These things are great. They just heat up with a heat gun, and you get a nice tight soldered waterproof connection. Once complete with all the cables, I went ahead and wrapped that splice connections with some electrical tape just to tidy up the connections, and then mounted that remote display within the wet bay with 4 screws. And now I have a tank monitor display right in the wet compartment, making it super easy to monitor the status of the tanks while doing things outside of the coach. I hope you have found this video helpful and that you can find and access this remote display in your fifth wheel as well to make your life a little easier while trying to maintain the tank systems of your coach. If it was, please like, comment, and of course subscribe to this channel. Thanks everyone.